You remember the first time you sat behind the drums and felt instantly hooked. But have you ever wondered how the world's biggest drummers got their start? These stories come from years of Drumeo shoots and a few new conversations we lined up for this video. Notice what pulled them in and what kept them playing. And if you've had this passion for drums but weren't sure how to start, you'll be surprised at the humble beginnings of many of your favorite drummers. If you've always loved the drums but never had the chance to play, maybe one of these stories will be the thing that helps you make 2026 your year to get started. Some stories are funny, some are emotional, and some are completely unexpected. Let's jump in.
I got into like rudiments when I was really young, like when I was like 4 or 5 years old. That's when I started playing drums. Just Animal taught me how to play the drums from
Nice.
the Muppets. So I was in school band. I got like a teacher that taught me like paradiddles and all my rudiments and how to read music. And I just went like real loose when I was like 13, and I was just like, I'm gonna play to Agnostic Front albums, Metallica albums, Beastie Boy albums, and I kind of did my own thing. Horrible chain of events led to great things. Was like my mom died a few days before high school, and I wasn't really playing a lot. I was just kind of playing in bands. And then I had heard everyone from like 7th and 8th and 9th grade, everyone was like, everyone's auditioning for Drumline. And I'm like, I need to do that right now, you know? And I just went to like tryouts, got in, and just really did like a deep dive into all the marching stuff, and then joined jazz band again, kind of got back into everything.
What got me into playing drums is my mom was a singer. She put a band together in Baltimore, which is where I'm from, and the band used to practice at my grandmother's house and also at my mom's house. For some strange reason, I fell in love with playing drums or by watching this drummer play. Every time the band would leave the house, I would pick up anything, a knife and fork or something to sit and practice and play and try to emulate what I saw. My parents brought me a drum kit when I was like 4, and I've been playing and emulating records, emulating what I saw on TV. Started playing in a club, or in clubs when I was like 6 years old with a band called the Fingertips. And how that happened was a guy, the bass player, was coming home from work, stuck in traffic on my road, heard some drums playing, pulled the car over, knocked on the door, and asked to see me, or this drummer. You know, back in them days, it was a more innocent time, so I guess my mom let him in and, led him to the room where I was, and there I was playing, and he couldn't believe that this little guy just sitting there playing all the things that he liked and heard. He hired me to play in his band.
How did you get started playing drums, and what made you want to pick up the sticks in the first place?
About when I was 3, I think, I got for Christmas, I got a drum, plastic drum. And in those days, Christmas was, a drum, a soldier, a car. It wasn't, the Star Wars collection or anything like that. So I got the drum, and I can't, camera went off in my head, and I have very vivid memories of sitting and playing with this drum. And I took to it instinctively, I think. And then when I was about 4 or 5, they made me a little drum kit with like crosswood with poles sticking out, and on the there was a triangle, and there was a cymbal, and like a small drum. It was something I could sit at or kneel at, and I thrashed along to the television, and it got louder and louder until I was banished to the bedroom. There was a guy across the road that had a snare drum and a bass drum. And it was only about 10 quid, £10. So my mum or dad, or mum and dad, they bought that for me. And then I started to slowly expand on that and play along to records.
Even the pros started somewhere. Travis got hooked watching Animal, Dennis by watching his mom's band, Phil by playing along to the TV. Every great drummer started the same way, one small step at a time. You might not know this, but Drumeo has an app called Musora that features lessons with real teachers, and a lot of them are really famous drummers too. And it's all broken down to help you make a little bit of progress every day. You just press play, follow the lessons, and you can start for free at the link below.
My first drum set was, let's see, is it behind there? That was my first drum set. But it was a toy kit, you know, I think I was 4 or 5. But I had this old crummy drum set, and my dad said, if you practice all summer and get really good, I'll buy you a new drum set. And that's what happened. I played my ass off. But again, that's when I was sort of forming who I was, getting self-confidence, finding a groove, finding an identity. But it's always been just a huge part of who I am. Without drumming, honestly, I don't know if I'd even be alive, because it gave me a purpose. It gave me an identity. And so all of a sudden I was a musician, you know, early on in high school, junior high school. And I was bullied, and this jackass, you know, hit me in the eye. He thought I was dating his girlfriend. I did later, but I remember thinking then, I was like, I got to do something drastic. I got to become a famous drummer. That'll show.
When I was around, I don't know, probably like 9, 10 years old or whatever, I remember you wouldn't let me add stuff to the kit unless I was practicing for a certain amount of time. Do you remember this?
I don't remember that.
And it would be like after like every week or so, I'd have to like show you what I've been working on. Then you'd be like, all right, you can throw another drum on there or something.
We'll give you another cymbal.
Yeah.
Okay, you get another cymbal.
I remember that. I was young though. I was
That's
probably
funny.
like 10 years old or something. But
He had that Tama one was, you were probably a few years old at that point, but we had a baby kit for him from day one. You know, there was a drum kit in the house for him as well.
it's all blur. I don't even remember when I started or anything. Like I just feel like I was just
Always
jammed.
playing.
Yeah, I don't
You were
really know.
always around it, you know?
Yeah.
You grew up literally on the road from the very beginning.
I started playing drums when I was 7 years old. I went to this elementary school in Louisville, Kentucky, and the teacher that was my 3rd grade teacher was also the founder of a pretty well-known percussion group. Now they're called the Louisville Leopard Percussionists. If you were in her class, Mrs. Diane Downs, if you were in her class during break times or after we finished our lesson for, you know, a certain period or whatever, she would take us over to the percussion instruments that she had, and we would learn how to play all types of percussion. She had xylophones, marimbas, she had Latin percussion, hand percussion, drum set, you name it. There was so much gear. And I learned how to play drums just from being in Mrs. Downs' class, and I instantly was hooked, and I knew that I wanted to keep going. And so I auditioned to join that group, and I got in, and that was at the ripe old age of 7, and it's been uphill from there on out.
Yeah, it's funny. I think people would think like, well, Al taught you, right? And no, he didn't. It was my dad. My dad had it was like a side table, and he had a couple magazines, and he was like, okay, with this one, this is the hi-hat. With this one, do it like this. And then if you can do your foot in between that, congratulations, you're playing Highway to Hell. And the second he saw that I could like maintain that, he was like, getting you a kit. And that's when I played Best of Volume 1 and Enema of the State over and over and over and over again.
I don't remember when I started because I was so young, according to my parents. As soon as I started walking, they threw sticks in my hands. I assumed every household had a drum set because that's what we had.
Yeah.
And then I soon learned that it was pretty anomalous that 4 boys end up as pro musicians.
Mm-hmm.
I started taking lessons from Murray Spivak, Chuck Flores when I was 9. Prior to that, I would just go to shows and kind of absorb music. I took privately from those 2 guys for about 5 to 6 years. And then I just started playing in bands. I remember forming a band in junior high, just playing with randos. And then I got into my first band, Bad for Good, who was signed to Interscope. And Steve Vai produced our record. So that was my first professional adventure into the music business.
I'd always wanted to play drums. I mean, I'm certainly going to date myself here, but like the Sears, Christmas catalog, you'd go through and there's always like an electric guitar and like a drum set. And I was just always drawn to that. My dad and my parents, but specifically my dad, who was not professional, but a very avid trumpet player. When band first came up in the 5th grade, 6th grade, whatever it was, I wanted to play drums, and he informed me that I needed to play a musical instrument.
Oh no.
So, got you back, Dad. I played piano as a kid. I played sax for years and years, and then finally, I think I told my parents, I'm like, I'm either gonna quit band or you're gonna let me play the drums.
Yeah.
And I'm sure part of it was they didn't want a drum kit in the house. They didn't,
Yeah.
you know, every parent's nightmare. Just kind of put my foot down and set an ultimatum, and they said yes, and here I am doing Drumeo now.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, I wanted to play drums. Was that Joe Morello playing drums? The first music that really captivated me was Take 5 by the Brubeck Quartet. And I killed myself as a kid trying to figure out all those at 5/4, you know? And then all of a sudden the Beatles come out and I learned the whole album in an afternoon, you know? I just go in my little drum room and just play for hours, and my mom would come and grab me and say, it's time to have lunch, and then boom, I'm back. My mom was somewhat supportive, so I hid it from my father for literally decades. And so when Dad was in, I would still sneak out, you know, not sneak, but I'd go out into my room and I'd put blankets over them or towels.
At my house, every other Tuesday, we would shed in my basement. When I say shed, we would have like 4 drum sets set up, and we would trade. The guys that were there, like from the very beginning, was like J.J. Williams, Buggy Edwards, Tim Steele, Jamal Moore, and Gene Setzer. Those are the guys I call the basement all-stars, you know, because they were there from the beginning. But it started off with just a few of us. And then, man, it grew to be this crazy thing that happened every other Tuesday. So many people came through, like Cora Coleman, Teddy Campbell, Gerald Hayward, John Blackwell, Spud Seawright. Like, people were coming from near and far, man, to be a part of this this environment. It felt like Fight Club, but with drums. It could be anywhere from 40 to 60 people in my basement, just watching and waiting for the opportunity to play. And in those moments, man, those Tuesdays, I grew so much. You know, I look back on it now, and it's mind-blowing that I had this this great foundation of the space, because I'm watching so many different people play their style or their way, you know, and I just kind of soaked a lot of that up. So a lot of what you see today really it's really stuff that I've kind of borrowed and taken from my friends, you know?
When I was a young boy, I mean, like under the age of 10, my father was a Baptist, so he went to his Baptist church, Ebenezer Baptist Church, and my brothers and I, and my 2 brothers and I, and my sister, and stuff, and we would sometimes sit upstairs in the balcony, and the band was up there. There's a drummer who I was always watching. You know, he had a very small kid, but he could play. And then they had the B3 organist, and it was just them 2 that sounded like a full-on band. It was amazing. But what fascinated me, I watched the B3 organist as much as I watched the drummer. And he was doing all his keyboard, phenomenal chord structures and transitions and stuff, and then pulling the drawbars and then working this, all the controls on it. I thought, whoa, how is he doing all that? I'm thinking as a little boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old, something like that. But then it fascinated me. While his hands was doing all this movement, I watched his foot moving on this pedalboard of keys. I didn't know what it was about. You know, I just said, whoa, how is he doing all of this? And how is he doing all of that at the same time? And he was doing the bass patterns and bass notes, changing melodically. And that fascinated me. I was laying on the floor in my suit and like this and watch him and marvel at it, you know, with a little boy's mind, because I didn't think as intelligent as now. But something clicked with that. It stuck with me. The fascination of how one person can do all of that at one time.